And the IRS says it will furlough about half of its workforce. The government shutdown could have wide-ranging effects on taxpayers and workers at the agency, both on and off the job. To hear more about this, we invite Brandon Arnold, the Executive Vice President of the National Taxpayers Union. Thanks for being here this morning, Brandon.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. Now, what can taxpayers expect with so many IRS agents out of work? I mean, that's 34,000 people who are not processing these.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about nearly half of the IRS workforce, so there will be significant disruptions at the IRS. The good news, of course, is that for most taxpayers, we're still months away from tax filing season, which typically doesn't start until January. At the same time, the IRS has a lot of work to do between now and then, especially with the passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which contains a lot of changes to tax policy, including the no tax on tips and a larger child tax credit and a lot of other changes that need to be taken care of ahead of time. And so those could be disrupted, the regulatory implementation of those new policies.
Understood. And what about people who are trying to get an extension on their filing? I mean, they still have to pay at the same deadline, but they may get a little bit of a break. But will this shutdown and the furloughs impact any of that?
Yeah, it's quite possible that those types of activities will be shut down. The IRS is notifying people publicly on its website and through other communications that their services are going to be disrupted and people can expect longer wait times. And if you've had to call the IRS recently, you know the wait times are already painful enough. So further delays are going to be especially disruptive and especially frustrating for a lot of taxpayers.
So, Brandon, there are two outcomes with this shutdown. It drags on or it ends quickly at this point. So for taxpayers, what will happen in each of those situations?
Yeah, I mean, my expectation is that this shutdown will not last for a prolonged period of time. I could be totally wrong there, but I think senators, particularly Democratic senators who have withheld their support for the short-term spending bill, are feeling a lot of pressure. That pressure is going to escalate dramatically next week when a lot of military personnel will not receive their paycheck. That's going to cause enormous amounts of frustration among constituents and a big economic disruption as well, because when those people don't have the resources that they would normally have to go out in their communities and spend money, support restaurants and local businesses, everyone is going to be frustrated, not just people that receive paychecks from the federal government.
Oh, and you talk about pressure. I mean, especially with this air traffic control shortages, with the government shutdown. I mean, think about how these lawmakers are probably going to have to think twice about how they proceed. Now, will workers at the IRS, both on and off the job, get back pay once the shutdown ends?
That's a great question. And the typical answer to that would be yes, absolutely. And in fact, the memo that the IRS sent to furloughed employees said that, yes, they will get back pay. Of course, the White House actually recently said that they're not so sure about that there is some question in the law that was passed in 2019 and signed by President Trump in his first term that says that the administration has a little bit of wiggle room when it comes to providing back pay, and that they may not provide back pay to furloughed employees after this shutdown ends. So it's an open question right now, but my guess is yes, employees that are furloughed are going to receive their full back pay as the 2019 law suggests.
I follow. Now, how can the government prevent another shutdown in the future to avoid this whole problem?
Yeah, I mean, shutdowns are just manufactured drama. They don't serve taxpayers well. They don't serve the economy well. There's a piece of legislation out there supported by Jody Arrington in the House and James Langford in the Senate that we strongly support, called the Preventing Government Shutdowns Act. If the government doesn't do its job, if Congress can't get a funding bill, it just extends the government funding for a short-term period to buy more time to hammer out an agreement so that we don't have these messy shutdowns, we don't have this manufactured drama, and that innocent Americans are not adversely impacted by the federal government closing up business for what oftentimes is a prolonged amount of time.
Very interesting, Brandon. And why do you call it manufactured? This is a problem that stems from budget imbalances and then lawmakers not being able to pass a CR and so forth. A lot of moving parts.
Well, it's manufactured because Congress just chooses, they voluntarily choose to not fund the government. You know, this is typical business in Washington where they wait until the very last minute to fund their appropriations bills, to pass them, to get them to the president's desk. There's all sorts of drama associated with that. They miss their deadlines time and time again. If Congress could do its job the way it's supposed to do on behalf of taxpayers, then we wouldn't have these shutdowns, we wouldn't have these last minute deals. It's like a college student that decides to go out partying instead of studying for their term paper or completing their term paper or studying for their exam. You see this time and time again. It's irresponsible. It's one of the reasons why a lot of Americans don't have a lot of trust or faith in Congress right now.
And Brandon, what advice do you have for taxpayers? I mean, they have to pay taxes, which no one finds fun, but then now they're facing these delays because of this whole problem.
Yeah, well, I really hope that this matter will resolve itself before the majority of taxpayers have to pay their taxes for tax year 2025, which the tax season for which should start in sometime in January. That date has not been announced yet. But I'm hopeful that, between now and then, they will clean up this mess in Washington, reopen the government, and the IRS can get back to getting those rules in place. Again, for all those changes that are going to be taking place, the no tax on overtime, no tax on tips, those are all retroactive to the start of 2025. So those rules need to be put into place very, very quickly. The larger child tax credit, a lot of other changes affecting corporate taxpayers as well as individual taxpayers. So hopefully this shutdown is not a prolonged one. We get this resolved. The IRS gets back to work and Americans are not significantly affected in an adverse way by this shutdown.
All right, Brandon Arnold, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.